Good morning, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us today, and welcome to the Chulalongkorn University's English as an International Language Webinar Series 2, Dialogue with the Scholars from Local to Global Context. I am Joey Andrew Santos, your Master of Ceremony for this session. Before we formally begin, allow me to give you some house rules. First, please ensure that you use the name that you've registered with us. Second, please keep your microphone on mute. And lastly, if you wish to be part of the conversation later on, please feel free to send your questions via Zoom chat and we'll be happy to read them for you. Once again, welcome to the last installment of the EIL Webinar Series 2. And to formally start today's program, may I request the director of the English as an International Language Program for her opening remarks. Please welcome Assistant Professor Dr. Ponpimon Sukawati.
Well, thank you, Joy. Welcome everyone to EIL Webinar Series 2, organized by the English as an International Language Program, Chulalongkorn University. To begin with, I'd like to thank all of my friends here as honorable speakers for contributing your time to be the panel in this academic dialogue. And thanks to the audience for starting your day with us. The talk today would be in a casual manner because we are all friends and colleagues in academia. And the invited scholars today are ready to share what they know to friends. From now on, we are going to learn and share with the invited scholars on the topic of second language writing, an all-time favorite. We have Dr. Tardy from the University of Arizona. We have PKM, Dr. Paul K. Matsuda from the Arizona State University, and Dr. Tanita Saenkhum, even though she's Thai, but she's from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, who will share their global view. And we have Dr. Supong Tangkiengsirisin from Language Institute, Thammasat University. And Dr. Issra Pramoolsook from Suranaree University of Technology to share the local view. Dr. Issra will also take a role of the moderator. Honored to have you here of the conversation. So let's enjoy the dialogue entitled Second Language Writing, What Lies Ahead in the New Normal. Enjoy.
Thank you very much, Assistant Professor Dr. Ponpimon, for that wonderful opening message. And in today's session, in our last installment, we're very much honored to have our guest moderator who will be part of our panel. He is Assistant Professor in the School of Foreign Languages, Suranaree University of Technology. His research interests include second language writing, discourse analysis, genre analysis, and disciplinary discourse. Let us welcome him on screen, Assistant Professor Dr. Issra Pramoolsook.
Good morning, everyone, and Sawadee krab from Thailand, wherever you are. Sawadee krab. And first of all, I have to thank Joey for coordinating. There are behind the scenes stories that put all of us as speakers together today. So thank you for your great help. I also would like to thank the EIL program, especially Dr. Ponpimon, for your invitation for me to be the moderator. Okay, for this session. I think you could remember how excited I was, when you told me that, Issra, would you like to moderate this session with Tardy, Paul Matsuda, and Dr. Tanita, and Dr. Supong, right? Okay, then tell the audience about how much I was excited. Okay, so thank you for the opportunity, and welcome everyone to the final webinar for this series number 2, organized by the EIL International Program, Chulalongkorn University. Before we started, Paul was saying that this is the last, we are saving the best for last, right, Paul? But definitely it's not. But I can guarantee the audience, the participants today, that the EIL program has chosen the best people in this field to talk about the topic that we are focusing today. So, and the topic I'm talking about is second language writing, what lies ahead in the new normal, right? From the title, you can see that our conversation will have predictive quality to it. But since none of our panelists is not a fortune teller, I think they will speak their opinions out from their expertise from their extensive experience, not from the thing that they see in the crystal balls in front of them. All right. So if you are ready, one more time, I would like to introduce each of the panelists today. First, can I start with Dr. Tanita? We have Dr. Tanita Saenkhum from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, who has been back to Thailand for quite some time. It's good to see you, Tanita. Okay, and then we have Christine Tardy. Hello, Christine. Good evening to you. Right? Sorry, I haven't been to the States for 4 years, so I'm not sure what time it is now. Dr. Christine is from the University of Arizona. Nice to meet you. And for the next one is Dr. Supong Tangkiengsirisin from Thammasat University. Good morning, June. I hope you are staying safe in Bangkok. It's getting serious every day in terms of COVID-19.
Safe and alive.
Okay. Hi, and last but not the least, of course, and probably saving the best for last, is PKM, like Dr. Ponpimon called him. So Paul K. Matsuda. Sawadee krap, Paul. Hi, I heard that you were back in Japan for quite some time as well, right?
Just for a month and a half.
Yes, I envy that sushi plate that you posted on Facebook the other day when you went to Tsukiji Market.
When we can all travel.
I wish I could join you. All right. Okay, everyone. So the first round, I think since I'm not going to introduce you in detail to the participants because they all know you very well already. So I would like to start this first round with asking you to talk about maybe a little bit about yourself and focusing on what you have been engaging yourself with in terms of teaching, researching, promoting SLW, second language writing during the pandemic. Maybe you can talk about what has worked for you and what hasn't worked. So how about we start with this first round? Okay, can I ask Ajahn Tanita first, please?
So much for organizing this panel. So like Dr. Issra said, so I'm from Thailand and I have worked in the US for I live and work there for 16 years. So, and I specialize in second language writing and also other issues related to L2 writing teacher development and writing program administration. Even though I'm stepping down from administration, but I still do, my research has to do with administration. So in the past, I would say 17 months or so, so UT, we had shipped, so I think starting in the middle of the spring semester, spring 2020, that we had to shift from in-person teaching to remote instruction. I'm not gonna say online, it's just more for me, remote instruction in the middle of the semester. And we had about a week to prepare. That time is what a spring break. And then we had about 1 week. Okay, when we got back to the school, you had to shift your instruction to everything had to be moved to Zoom, right? So both my student and I, somehow we survived remote learning and teaching, somehow. And then later in the summer of 2020, I attended online teaching boot camp offered by my institution during the summer so that all the teacher instructors could be ready to teach online classes in fall 2020. So I have taught online classes, I think 4 consecutive semesters. And during fall 2020, spring 2021, summer 2021, and including spring 2020. So, and as I taught, I encountered some challenges, struggles from my own perspective as an instructor. And also I can tell that my students also struggled, right? So that's during the pandemic, as I taught. So I gradually learned to develop and some online teaching practices and try to fine-tune my own teaching, and which I would be happy to share with everyone today. And in terms of research, based on my experience submitting my own work to journals and serving as a reviewer during the pandemic. So from an author perspective, review processes have been delayed. And from a reviewer perspective, I also asked for several extensions on my review from journals because it was so difficult to focus on my own work, teaching, and all the circumstances, right? So, and then it takes longer time to hear back from a journal, and I try to understand because I'm speaking from a reviewer perspective too. And for my own research, I had to make some adjustment to my research activities, types of data that I collected. And since I'm on sabbatical the entire year in Thailand, I was planning on to collect data from students, but I don't think it's not going to happen. So I have to figure it out other sources of data that I will collect for my ongoing project on L2 writing instruction in Thailand. So I'm going to stop here and then we can talk. We can let the conversation begin later.
Thank you, Dr. Tanita. That's a very good start. Interesting stories from you already, from both teaching and serving as reviewers for journals, right? Thank you so much. Moving on to another lady, Christine, please. Would you like to go next?
Sure. I also want to start by just thanking all of you who have organized this, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of it. So when the pandemic started, I like how Tanita sort of shared where she was with things. I was actually on sabbatical at the time, and I thought it was going to be, my productive, refreshing 6 months, but about a month and a half, I guess it was almost 2 months into it, everything closed down. And I have a young child who was 7 at the time. And so I suddenly had not only, not normal life, but also my child at home 24 hours a day and trying to help him with remote school. So that was exciting and interesting. I was in my sabbatical working on a research project where I was looking at collaborative writing, which also was assuming people were doing this sort of face-to-face. So I, like Tanita, had to kind of recalibrate how I was collecting data. I was able to finish some of the data collection, but not all. And when we talk later about some of the research activities, I'd be happy to talk about that. And another activity that I've been involved in, which I wasn't doing during sabbatical, but picked up when I returned, is I help organize administratively our first year undergraduate writing programs that take place at what we call micro campuses. And so these are partner programs between University of Arizona and campuses in other countries, mostly in China, but not exclusively. And so we had teachers in China who had come home during the pandemic because it was vacation time, it was a big holiday, and couldn't return and had to finish teaching by distance. And so we suddenly had to support them. And then we had to recruit new teachers who couldn't go to China and develop a whole online curriculum for that. So that was a lot of what I spent my time on last year. Other areas of interest for me, academic writing very broadly and teacher education. And so much of my teaching these days is teacher education. And like Tanita, I've been trying to adapt and develop my skills in teaching remotely, and even looking forward this year to how things are going to be, because it's very uncertain. Even though our university says we'll be in person in 2 weeks, I'm not sure that's the case. And as in terms of research, trying to figure out how to continue some of the research that I started on collaboration, but also just the time and trying to juggle many different things and new stresses that I didn't have before in my life, and figuring out what you can do and what you can't do. And I've turned to collaborative work for a lot of my research as a way to sort of motivate me and keep things going. But I've also had to adjust my expectations of myself. So that's kind of a brief snapshot, I guess, of what I'm doing these days.
Thank you, Christine. Obviously, the pandemic has affected the way that we research as well. Both you and Tanita mentioned about how difficult it gets in terms of collecting the data, especially when you cannot get close to your subjects physically, right? So thank you. That's very interesting. Dr. Supong, would you like to say something on this?
Yes. Good morning from Bangkok, right, Thailand. and it's good to see all of you here, right? You know, all my good friends. Thank you, you know, for inviting me, right, to be here. So yeah, since, I mean, when the pandemic started, you know, all of us, you know, were excited and frightened, as you know, right? So, you know, I think we were in the same situation, okay? So we just had to shift everything, you know, from the normal, right, regular on-site classrooms, okay, to, yeah, as Tanita mentioned, okay, it was like a remote instruction, okay, using different platforms, you know, for our teaching. And so, yeah, you know, we started to learn, okay, many different things about, you know, the online tools, okay. So, you know, we got to know Zoom, we got to know MS Teams. So Thammasat University has used MS Teams, okay, with our students, right? So, you know, most of our faculty members, okay, started to learn how to use it. We also have, you know, Google Classroom, Google Meets, okay? So, you know, we have become, you know, more and more familiar, you know, with that, okay? Actually, you know, before, I mean, the pandemic started, you know, we were planning to go to the United States, right, you know, to attend the TESOL conference, okay? And so, you know, we missed that, okay? And actually, you know, I was about, you know, to travel to different places, you know, I mean, joining different conferences, you know, last year, okay? But, you know, all the plan, you know, has to be scrapped, right? And we had to cancel everything. So it was like, you know, it was a shame, a pity, okay? So, you know, I have been stuck here, right, in Bangkok, Thailand, okay, for a while, right? So, you know, in terms of teaching, right, we still follow, okay, the lesson plans that we had, okay, but you know, we had to shift to, you know, to the online platform, as I mentioned, okay, so we had to struggle a lot, you know, there were new challenges that we had to encounter and overcome, all right? So now, you know, we've been trying, you know, to adjust, you know, our lessons, you know, to suit, okay, the way that we are teaching, okay? In terms of, you know, teaching writing, you know, for the Language Institute, okay, Thammasat University, you know, we don't have, I mean, for the foundation courses that we teach, okay, we don't have, I mean, a separate lesson, you know, for writing, okay? Maybe just like a few tasks, you know, for writing, okay? That's kind of usual activity that we normally assign to our students, okay? Other than that, you know, we have the ESP courses, like, you know, I'm teaching, you know, one of the ESP courses focusing on teaching business writing, okay? So that would be a kind of, you know, the writing course that I'm involved with, right? You know, plus, you know, it's the what you call the genre based, okay, kind of course, okay? And so I'm been developing a textbook, you know, based on what I've been teaching, right, from that course, all right? So I'm trying, you know, to collect the data, right, and then develop, you know, a textbook that should be suitable, okay, for teaching kind of, you know, business communication, written business communication, right, you know, for Thai learners. So I hope, you know, my textbook, you know, will be ready soon, okay? In terms of research, okay, I've been supervising many MA and PhD students, right? So but maybe during the pandemic, no students, you know, have been doing writing, okay, that they're not researching writing. Okay, I got a few students, you know, working on writing, you know, before the pandemic, but during the pandemic, everyone, you know, was doing something else. Okay, so that's fine. But I have examined many theses as well, you know, at Thammasat and also at other universities, also at Suranaree University, right? And I think I examined one of Issra's students' thesis, right? PhD thesis. You can talk more about that. Okay, it was about writing actually. Okay, so I think, you know, the research in general in Thailand regarding writing still revolves around maybe feedback, delivery, okay, different kinds of feedback, and also the collaborative writing, okay, and also something about the language use, okay, in writing, like, you know, some grammatical structures used in writing, or lexical items like collocations, okay, used in writing. So, you know, we're still, I mean, I think, you know, in Thailand, we're still working on this. I mean, our students, right, you know, are interested, you know, in such topics. Yes. Okay, so I think that's all from me.
Thank you, Dr. Supong. I think since both of us teach in Thai universities, I think we have similar stories about, you know, when the pandemic occurred, you know, our university just give us a intensive course how to use technology to teach, right? Especially, you know, how to teach writing through these online software as well. So very similar. One thing that you mentioned is quite interesting, which is similar to what Paul mentioned behind the scene about, you know, how the pandemic affected the way that we meet at the conferences. I think at the end, towards the end, I think we can pick up this issue and maybe we can discuss on this issue again before we finish our panel today. Thank you. Next, Paul, please. What have you been up to?
All right. So since the pandemic, my life has changed almost completely. Before the pandemic, I was traveling constantly and working with people in person to talk about teaching, talk about research, and I haven't been able to do that anymore. So I've been spending a lot of time online in small groups, large groups, continuing to advocate for students, continuing to provide strategies, ways of thinking about teaching and writing. And so I've kept myself quite busy in that respect. But the first thing that I had to do was to undo what I was doing, which was I was organizing the symposium on second language writing to be held in Turkey. And I was probably one of the first organizers to cancel academic conferences. And it was just my gut feeling, but I knew it wasn't going to happen in a year or two. The pandemic wasn't going away. So I canceled it early, and that was the right decision. And I haven't started planning the next symposium yet, after a year and a half. And I probably won't do anything next year. And I thought about having online conferences just to bring people together so that we can keep in touch. But then I realized that there were so many small and large conferences, local and international, that were happening online. So I felt that the niche, the need for connection was already being met. So rather than trying to have another conference and increase the burden on people, I decided to just not do anything. And instead, I organized a series of webinars, and I call it webinars, but it's just extended online conversations and about various issues, mostly having to do with the directions for the professions. And my perspective wasn't very pessimistic or very optimistic or innovative, but it was nice to talk to people and have people share their perspectives, their concerns, and so on. And so that's what I've been doing.
Thank you, Paul. But glad to see that, you know, on your Facebook, you're still keeping yourself busy with other things that you enjoy as well, right? Like motorcycle riding, right? These days. All right. So thank you. That's a good round. And I think I have a lot of topics, and the participant might be interested in a lot of things that you mentioned already. Can I focus on the supervising our students for this second round? Since a lot of the participants could be supervising their students, or a lot of them are students who are being supervised online these days. So how does the pandemic affect your traditional ways of supervising your thesis students? So Christine, can I start with you this time, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I love talking about this because I had this last year a cohort of, I think, 7 PhD students at various stages. And when the pandemic hit, so as I was on sabbatical, I still wanted to stay in touch with them. So I was going into campus every, I think, 3 weeks, and we were meeting for a morning, and we got a room in the library, and we would write together for a few hours and then kind of talk through where everybody was, share somebody's work. And then when things shut down, I immediately sort of feared for where they were all going to be, because it was clear that everyone's lives were getting disrupted. So we started meeting every Friday for 1 hour. And we also added on Zoom, and we also added writing boot camps every few weeks where we would kind of bracket off a 3-hour time block where we would just write together. And so for our weekly meetings, we also rotated. We would do 1 week where we just wrote, and then at the end we would kind of check in where everybody was. And then the next week we would share somebody's writing and discuss it. And it's more than I would have done if we were face to face, but I kind of felt compelled to keep in touch with everybody and give some kind of support. And it ended up being amazing. I think for all of us, it helped me with my own writing, but it also just kept us in contact. And as you all know, we all needed contact, especially in those first few months where we were so isolated, and that has still continued. So we're still doing that. This summer we've taken a little bit of a break, but have continued. And I think I'll continue doing that with my students. And I'm actually really happy to have, I didn't really work by Zoom before, but to have a new way to collaborate, even when people are traveling or might have left campus and be, doing research from another place. So I feel like it's really helped, and it's given us some new tools for working together. And my main goal is always like keeping the communication open between me and my students. And that was my biggest fear, is like, oh my gosh, we'll never have any time to see where each other is. And if I disappear from their lives, they might forget their research. But this has really helped us just kind of maintain that relationship and open communication.
Chris, I think we had the same, I had the same situation as well. I thought that, with the physical distancing, right? We would meet our students less, but in fact, they know that we stay home. We have nothing much to do. So, Ajahn, can you, check these sentences for me? Can you check these drafts for me? So it's even, more work for us, which is okay. It's for their benefits. Okay, thanks, Chris. Ajahn Tanita, please next. Do you have anything to share about tutoring or supervising your research students during the pandemic?
Yeah. Okay, thanks. In addition to what Chris says, I have done the same thing. So we just moved from like face-to-face meeting in my office into like Zoom, right? But I think one thing I want to add is that I keep checking on my grad students, making sure that they are okay, like mentally, because for them, I feel like for them, they're not grad student in the US. They don't just study; they have other things to take care, like their kids, their family members. So making sure that, okay, while they are taking care of something else, they also can carry on their research. That is very important. And then try to having a meeting. Okay, are you okay? Anything, feel free to talk to me. Me and my student is more like friends, colleagues, like that. So so we have different kind of relationship, like as a professor, mentors, mentees, like friends, colleagues, like that. So try to create that kind of relationship so that they feel comfortable sharing and discussing things with you. And one of my students, she had to, at first she wanted to collect data from human subjects, but during the pandemic, and she cannot wait because she wants to graduate. So she had to shift the research directions from they had to do something different, to try to, instead of just interviewing students, observing teachers. So she went into a different direction and went into a different topic, because you can't wait because you want to graduate. So, and then we have to support the student, right? If they want to shift the direction of their research. So I think this is the roles of advisors and mentors. I think this is very important. I feel that I treat students as a whole person, right? We don't just teach them. It's more, we are humans, right? So you understand them, you teach them, and then build that relationship. I feel like this should come first. And then after that, I think about academics related issues, right? Can make them feel more comfortable and help them to succeed. This is how I see the mentoring relationships.
Wow, Dr. Tanita, I think you hit the right point about the mental health of our students, right? When we had the pandemic, we thought, oh, what should we do about this and that, and we might forget that actually our students would have those mental stress as well. Some of them are far away from home. I think at my university, a lot of international universities have to be on campus. They cannot go home. And one good thing is that, they have more time dedicated for their research, but we never know if they are feeling sad or homesick or not. Maybe they care about their families back home. So I think you made a very good point there. And I saw one of the participants say yes to the issue of mental health that you mentioned. Okay, thank you, Dr. Tanita. Next is Dr. Supong, please. Dr. Supong, would you like to also share about, how you give feedback to your supervisees, because feedback is your expertise, right? Giving feedback is your expertise.
It's not my expertise anymore because, because of less time that we have. So I would say that, supervision, is maybe, it accounts for maybe 20% of my whole work, right? Because I have to teach, I have to manage the institute and, among other things. Okay, but, I'm a kind of flexible person. I think, we need to be flexible because students, have different needs and they have different learning styles, right? So they can contact me, right, from any channels. Okay, so that means, yeah, we can do it on Zoom. Okay, or we can do it like on the line, right? Through line messages. We can do it, through emails. Okay, so that means, we have to be quick because, some of the students are quick, right? Quicker than others. So this, they need quick feedback. Like maybe they send me, their draft today, and they, oh, please, check the draft. And they expect, me to return, right? And then give them some feedback and return, okay, the comments to them maybe the next day, okay, which is sometimes, difficult, right? So we need to be, flexible, and then, we try to do it like more collaboratively. So when I do it, like, using some online tools, okay, like Google Doc. So sometimes, I can write, with the students as well, all right? If you have time, or if you have enough time, right? Maybe some of the students, can send me that draft and, we can go through, right, that drafts together. Okay, so that's kind of more convenient. But, the bad thing is, my eyes are getting impaired, right, damaged, because now we have to learn, how to read, papers, and drafts and things, online. Okay, so now no more paper, less paper, right? So we have to get used to that, and then my eyes, have become, drier and drier, and sometimes I can hardly see, things, clearly, right? Blurry. Everything is blurry now. Yeah. So we think, yeah, as Tanita mentioned, okay, mental health is important, right? So we just have to know how to mentor our student, during this kind of situation. Okay. So when we try to establish, right, the rapport with them, right? Particularly those, who just started, right, their research. Okay, so that means that they are quite frustrated. Okay, so that means, we need to talk with them maybe a lot more. Okay, yeah, I would say that, this could be kind of a blessing in disguise, because actually when we can contact each other, all right, using some online tools, so that means, we can do it anytime, right? As some of you mentioned, right? So it could be like in the evening, right? Could be late at night. Okay, so I'm open to that. Okay, so sometimes, we can talk, right? And then, we can see. I mean, we can find out, right? What their interests are. What they are doing. How far have they been into, right, in that research? Okay, we have to give feedback. Kind of, in time. Yeah. So that means, we have to work harder. Okay, we have to know some new techniques, from mentoring, supervising. Okay, we have to take care of our eyes, right? And we have to adjust, to this new situation. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Supong. I think we have similar stories, not just in Thailand, but all over the world as well. One thing you mentioned is interesting, that we have saved a lot of paper, really, by doing it online. We never knew that, actually doing it like this with the pandemic, we can save tons of papers maybe around the world. So thank you so much. We're moving on, Paul. I think you are very used to supervising long distance, right? So, but do you have any tips for us as well about how supervising online effectively?
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I think everyone covered pretty much everything I wanted to say, and they might be doing a lot better than I am. I'm not good at keeping in touch. So one strategy that I use is every time I meet with a student, at the end of the meeting, we schedule the next meeting so that there is a definite deadline for them to meet. That gives them some productive tension. And it also keeps me on the toe and in working with students and responding to their needs on a regular basis. And especially for students who are revising their drafts or writing their proposals, working on their publications, I try to meet with them semi-regularly, at least once a week or so, so that we can keep the momentum going. And for students who are not actively writing, I try to give them some space so that they don't feel that undue pressure all the time. But that's a balancing act. And I do have some students who kind of drift away, and I have to keep reminding them to make an appointment, talk to me. And another thing is I realize that my students tend to hesitate to contact me because they think I'm busy. I am busy, but reminding them that I'm available constantly is something that I need to work on.
Thank you, Paul. And I think you have done a good job. We know that you used to travel a lot, and wherever you are, I know that your student can approach you, can ask you for your consultation or opinions on their research and writing. Thank you very much. Okay, so the next question will be from my own interest. Since you mentioned, that pandemic obviously affected the way that we collect our data as well. A lot of participants, all of us are researchers in SLW. So, and most of the time our data written artifacts from whatever sources we are interested in, right? And since we cannot, sometimes we have to get to these sources ourselves physically, but now we cannot. So do you have any tips or suggestions of how we deal with this issue of collecting data for our research? Who would like to start for this round?
I think I can start
please.
because because this is it just came out. I got an idea like 2 days ago when I had a video call with friends, because I'm here to work on my second book. Hopefully my second book. Okay, so and I am working on my project on English writing instruction in Thailand, and I plan to have different chapters, right? So and I already interviewed teachers, and I'm going to analyze textbooks, and I already did some archival, the historical part. And I wanted to interview students, but I don't think it's going to happen this entire year here. So, and I had to thank to my friend, because in last 2 days ago, we had a conversation on a Facebook video call. And we talked about TikToks. We were talking about other different educational online platforms that teachers have been using in order to teach their students, to motivate their students about learning languages. And one of my friends mentioned like I think you all know, like her name is Matsuda. She's a teacher who teaches English, and she used TikTok as a way to teach English to her students. And from our conversation, I got an idea I need to have one chapter that talks about like online educational platform that used to teach, like TikToks, YouTube, and like other, like some people use Facebook. So I'm going to analyze the content that is available in the public and see how these teachers use this media as a way to deliver like writing. And I can also look at the comments, right, that open in the public. So this is going to be a plan to replace the student part, that I can get comments from the student, hopefully. And then I can like and I don't have to do an IRB because this content is public. So this is the plan I just got out like 2 days ago. So you have to try to think through about, okay, this is not going to happen, plan A and plan B and the backup plans. And I think this chapter is going to be important because of these days, right? You can't teach writing without this technology. So the roles of this technology in teaching writing, what is it like in Thailand? Like that. So this is going to be my kind of like my backup plans. So,
I really like the idea of always having plan B, right? And sometimes we might have even to have plan C and plan D and plan G as well.
Or plan Z, right? We have the 24, 26 letters, so we have a lot of plans like that. So
Plan Z
yeah, right?
as well.
Plan C, D until Z, like yeah. So
and after that, I don't know, maybe plan gamma or beta or delta. No, delta shouldn't be the word these days.
No,
We're so
yeah,
afraid of delta.
no, yeah.
All right.
So yeah, hopefully it will work. But this is I think I got excited about these ideas from like conversations like that, and then I just kind of from that this is how I could do with my project like that. So
very good, Tanita. I think by sharing your ideas or speaking out your concerns with your colleagues, right? Like this webinar, for example, maybe you get the ideas that you never thought about before that could solve your data collection problem. So thank you so much. Next is Chris, please.
Sure. Yeah, I think I mentioned that I was working on a research project when everything closed down, and I was looking at collaborative writing. So I was meeting with undergraduate students and had them performing a collaborative writing task, and we were just meeting somewhere on campus. They were working together at a laptop, and I was screen recording it and then doing interviews within a couple of weeks of that. And I was also collecting data of graduate students doing collaborative writing, either with other graduate students or with faculty. And those were all, at the time, they could choose, but they were all happened to be face-to-face for the graduate students. That's how they worked. So I stopped collecting data when everything shut down. And actually about 6 months later, I sent a new call recruiting, and I was able to get some new people at the graduate student level. And it was interesting because I think although most people that I was working with originally had been choosing to collaborate in person, they had all in the 6 months after kind of become accustomed to working online. And so it might be a different data set because now they're doing their discussions online, whereas before they were sitting together in a room and talking about a Google Doc, for example. But yeah, so I was able to actually adjust some of the data collection. And again, it's slightly different, but I think as people learn new ways to teach and new ways to write and new ways to collaborate in writing, we will have to and be able to kind of adjust our data collection and learn how to use these remote data collection tools, which I think is really interesting too, because it opens up space, to maybe look at, to interview people or observe contexts that you don't have access to otherwise. So I actually think there's some nice opportunities that we're now kind of opening, at least some people were doing this before, but for me, this is new to kind of open my eyes to, I can interview someone in another country, or I can observe a class that's not on my campus.
Chris mentioned about observation. Yes, and I think that could be quite quite big problem here, because interview, of course, we can do online, but I still don't know how to do observation effectively in the way that we do physically when we observe at the back of the classroom or something like that. I think that's something we have to think about later. Dr. Supong, any tips for collecting data during the pandemic?
Yes, I just want to follow up on what Christine and Tanita talked about, right? So when I was collecting the data, from my textbook, okay, part of that, would be the feedback, from the students, from the users of the book. Okay, actually, I had first draft and I had them try, my textbook. Okay, so talking about the platform that we used, okay, the MS team. Actually, we can put the students, right, in different rooms, right, the breakout rooms. So what I did was, I observed them, as Christine mentioned, about observation. Okay, I went to different rooms, okay, listening to them. But I told them before that it would be different, rooms. So in terms of observing, we could do it, of course, online, Okay, so we could see their, their ways, of delivering feedback to each other. So there was a kind of peer feedback that they share, right? During the discussion, okay, in each breakout room. Okay, so I can support them sometimes, help them, to discuss, right, things so that they could write, okay, the business email, for example, that they were assigned, to write about. Okay, so that would be part of the data collection that I was doing, okay, for my textbook project. Okay, and if I have been finished, right, with the whole textbook, maybe for a second draft, okay, I'm going to implement that. So after I implement that, then I'm going to do the interview. Okay, so online interview would be very convenient. I'm going to interview some students who use the textbook from my course, and also other teachers, my colleagues who also taught the same course, right? I'm going to interview them so that it could develop, revise in the textbook, okay, so that I have another version, hopefully a better version of my textbook. As I mentioned, okay, the textbook that I've been developing is business writing, written business communication. So in that textbook, we are teaching how to write business emails. That's one of the main topics, the content, okay, that we included, in the course description. Okay, so I try to collect the data, from different sources, so that we have more examples, okay, of business emails, used in the real world. But maybe as we can guess, right, it's not easy, okay, to collect the data, from actual, right, organizations. It's hard to access the information there. So maybe I had to use kind of a connection. My friends, who work in different places, my students as well, right, MA or PhD students, who work in different companies. All right, and I asked them to send me their samples, of business emails that I have been using, okay, and have analyzed, the emails. All right, using the move analysis, okay, that's part of the genre-based analysis that have been working on. All right, and then I try to make my textbook more descriptive than prescriptive. That means we don't. I just try to encourage my students to think more critically about the examples, because actually when students or learners, right, use the textbook, they tend to follow everything, right, in the instructions, in the explanations, right, the models, okay. But I just try to ask them, right, to think about the examples as well. It doesn't mean that the examples are the best, because when we use a kind of corpus-based, okay, way of collecting the data, okay, so it maybe nothing, right, is perfectly right. Okay, so they have to also share their ideas about the samples that they see. Okay, so what can they see as a kind of flaw, okay, or weakness, in the examples that I have been given as well. All right, so my textbook would be less prescriptive. Of course, I give them, some instructions. Okay, give them some ideas of how to write, okay, business email, for example, and I have steps, for them to follow. Okay, but they have to also reflect, on what they see, on the example, so that they have their own way, all right, of writing. Because actually now, we talk about intercultural communication, right? So people from different cultures, would write emails in different ways, for example. So what we write may not be right, when readers, from other cultures, read our emails, for example. So this is, what I'm trying, to encourage, right, our students, to think about, right, so that they can develop their own email. They don't just have to follow the examples that they are given. After they reflect, okay, on the examples, they can create their own way. But they have to also give me some reasons, why, right, they are using that kind of way, for writing. But of course, they have to follow the strategies and the steps that I have shown them, right? So I think, this is quite an interesting project. And so at the end, right, I would have maybe a textbook suitable for our students in the future. Thank you.
Excellent story, Dr. Supong. I think so far we have been talking about us giving feedback to our students, right? But you mentioned a very interesting point as well about what about peer feedback, especially if you are researching peer feedback among your students, right? How would they welcome giving feedback through online software or something like that? I think that's another interesting issue. Well, finally, Paul, how about you? Giving feedback,
collecting data. So everybody has been talking about collecting data and working with empirical materials. And I do a lot of different things methodologically. And I also do philosophical inquiry and historical inquiry, which does involve some amount of data for primary and secondary. But many of the things that I do can be done without accessing data. But in applied linguistics programs and language research programs, we typically don't have coursework or any formal training in critical thinking or philosophical modes of inquiry or historical modes of inquiry for that matter. And I think that's a real problem. And at a time like this, when we can't go out and collect data as we wish, I mean, we can be creative like Tanita and Chris and others to collect data in different ways. But I think it's also important to take the time to review what we have done so far, synthesize them, critique them, and come up with new definitions, new ways of looking at things. I think that's another way, a productive way of spending our intellectual energy while we're staying home.
All right,
May I
Paul.
add?
Yeah, sure, Chris.
So the one project that I was able to start, and I can't say finish, but bring to some kind of completion in the last 12 months was a project I've wanted to do for years, but never had the time. And it was because I was spending so much time, like maybe some of you, on social media reading about the pandemic. And I found myself every night reading Twitter and following all of these epidemiologists. And so I actually was able to do a project, a discourse analysis project looking at epidemiologist tweets, which is something, again, I was interested in climate scientist tweets, but since I was spending my time reading about the pandemic, I decided to do that project. And it was actually the perfect pandemic project because it sort of doubled my time of what I was reading anyway. And it's not a second language writing project, but it's a writing project. So, there might be ways that people can find that where their attention is sort of looking at certain things, if you can dovetail that into a research project as well.
Oh, yeah, obviously, you've been more productive during the pandemic, Chris.
Just using my doom scrolling in a productive way.
Maybe you discovered your hidden interest in epidemiologic discourse, something like that.
Exactly.
Thank you. Sorry, I have to pick up this issue from the floor. Sorry, since we've been talking about teaching, researching, collecting data, supervising our students. One of the participants mentioned about how about the way we assess our students' writing. Well, has the pandemic affected the way that we give marks or give them feedback? Yes. Assessment during the pandemic. Paul, please.
So this is an extension of what I have already been doing, but I've been advocating spending less time and energy assessing and spending more time teaching. I think in writing instruction in general, more than in other modes of communication, we have emphasized perfection and completion of projects rather than building competencies. So, in speaking classes, we don't expect students to be able to write perfect speech from the beginning, right? Especially impromptu, like professional quality. But in writing classes, somehow we ask students to write an essay and then they have to meet all the requirements from the beginning. I think that's ridiculous. I'm not advocating lowering standards, but I think we need to spend more time helping students build their competencies by taking on easier tasks. And rather than assessing the quality of outcomes so much, I think we need to focus more on assessing and rewarding good behavior that leads to learning and autonomy.
Oh, yes, I really like your idea, rather than focusing on completion and perfection, we should also focus on competency as well. Thank you. Yes, who would like to comment on assessing our students' writing during the pandemic?
I'm happy to hear. Yeah, sorry. I'm happy to hear that, from Paul, right? That we should, spend less time assessing, right? Because, at Thammasat, we've been talking a lot about assessing students, objectively, which is of course, very difficult, right? So, we have, abandoned, all exams actually, because, exams cannot be taken at the university, right? On the campus. So, because, we use MS Team or Zoom, okay? We were talking about, online tests as well, but of course, that's very difficult. Okay, so we change our plans, right? From exam, usually exam, to projects or writing assignments. Okay, but as I mentioned earlier, right? For maybe for the foundation courses that we teach. Okay, the writing is not kind of essay writing, just kind of maybe small writing tasks. Okay, so we've been trying to use the kind of raters, okay, so that the two teachers, okay, who pair up, would just do the assessing together, right, and compare the scores. Okay, that's for the assessment part. But I agree, with Paul that we should focus more on teaching. Okay, so that they could improve their writing, their thinking, right, their skills, and of course, we should focus less, on grammar. Here, in Thailand, I would say that we still love teaching grammar, assessing grammar. So the first thing that we look at, on a student's paper, would be, the language use and grammar. Okay, but we tend, to focus less on the content. Actually, content feedback should come first, right? And we should encourage our students, to write different drafts. Okay, but still, right, I think in many schools and universities here in Thailand, we still focus only on one draft writing and focus only on grammatical feedback, okay, or spelling, punctuation, okay. We tend to, still focus on, the small things, okay, but, content that comes from the students, kind of critical thinking or the input that they have, should be more emphasized, okay. We need to give the students, more input now, because now during the pandemic, students, can access information. They should learn, how to access information online appropriately. All right. The problem, of student writing is mainly that they haven't read enough, right? They haven't read much enough so that they have something to write about. So whatever they write, could just come from kind of their own imagination, their own feeling. Okay, that's a little limited. Okay, it's good, for them, to express the ideas, in some tasks, but, in some academic tasks, right, they need to read a lot. But then, we encounter another problem, plagiarism, right? So now students, have learned how to plagiarize, right, more skillfully, okay? So teachers then have to learn, how to detect, okay, any plagiarized, part of material, from our students. So actually, this is a kind of hard work as well. Harder work that, that we have. Okay, so yeah, we should focus more on teaching, okay, helping them, to develop drafts. We can also reduce plagiarism, okay, after, we have asked them, to do the Turn-it-in, for example, right? And, we have them to revise. We ask them, to revise their draft. All right, so that would be very useful, for their learning, okay, and assess less, maybe focus less, on the what you call the minor, okay, the minor things, on writing. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Supong. I think you just opened a Pandora box of talking about the plagiarism. I think, especially, everything is being accessed online these days. I think, plagiarism is something that we all, for second language writing, we have to be very much careful about as well. Tanita and Chris, any ideas on assessing your students' writing or even plagiarism, detecting plagiarism or preventing plagiarism? Any ideas or comments?
I can talk about assessing. One thing that I have done in the past 4 semesters during the pandemic is that I assign low stakes assignments. And I did some kind of like assessing my own teaching, asking students to reflect on their own learning based on so for example, I ask them, I give them a prompt, and then everyone is required to write a response to the prompt, right? And then other students also have to respond to one other person post. It's a weekly like writing post. And I graded it more on like complete, incomplete, or satisfactory or unsatisfactory. And I give a clear like definition what incomplete means, what an incomplete means. And so they know that, okay, and I think it works a lot, at least from my perspective. And I check on students. They said that they learn from each other, and they were more like productive in terms of like getting like the content is so rich in their discussion boards. So I think this is a way that you can encourage them to write and to share their ideas. I think I saw one of the questions about how do you motivate your student to write. So having them to have a forum for them to write and share, I think this worked very well, at least from my class. So that I think when something is low stakes, they feel comfortable. They want to share the ideas. There are no errors, no grammatical, it's just your ideas, right? Making sure that you read the assigned reading, and then you respond to the prompt, and then your friends come in, and it's a very good conversation that and then I, as an instructor, I chime in when it's necessary. I let them do the work. And then when we meet as a class, I pick up on some of the important points in the discussion. And then we bring to the discussion. So I think this is more important because of like Paul said, I feel like the goals of online teaching maybe should be different from like in-person teaching, right? The way to teach them, the way to motivate students. I think this is more important. And I found it works very well. I still doing the grading thing like ABC, but just for one major project, final project, but I give them a rubric. But for the like a weekly assignments, minor assignments, I do like complete, incomplete, the low stake assignments. That is how I go about. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Tanita. That sounds like a takeaway message for all of us to try in our classes later. I really like your idea. Thank you. Chris, the last one, please, on assessing your students' writing.
Yeah, everyone has had such great comments. I'm not sure I have too much to add to them. I just would repeat everything they said. The only little thing that maybe to consider is I know that a lot of my colleagues, and I wasn't teaching writing, but I was teaching teacher education courses in which people were writing, found that near, halfway through the semester, we were like cutting things out of our class. Like, well, I don't have time to do that, or I don't want to overburden students and add that. And I think that has assessment implications too. Like, do we have to have as many high stakes writing projects in a course? And a lot of people online were finding that it was just too much. And how can we assess the outcomes of a course maybe with fewer high stakes writing assignments, for example? So it's a question that I have. It's something I found myself doing, and many of my colleagues, is lessening the burden and trying to add more kind of fun, low stakes assignments and writing in as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Chris. I think we have gone halfway through our webinar already. I think so far we have talked about what we have been doing during the pandemic. So let's call that pandemic pedagogy, right? In the next hour, I think it's time for us to look forward, look into the future, to make it suitable to the topic that we are talking about today, what lies ahead after the next normal. But before that, I would like to talk about one issue that in fact Chris mentioned in our corresponding emails earlier. So, and you even mentioned that, Chris, about tweets, which is a genre, right? Another genre. So have you talked about the genres of writing, especially multimodal writing? Do you come across any new emerging genres during the pandemic, apart from tweets?
Yeah, I've actually been really interested in this, both for academic writing and also non-academic writing. Just seeing the importance of academic information being communicated to a public audience. I think it's an underrated area of what we teach. We tend to focus on an academic audience, but not academic content for a general audience. And just seeing how important it is that academic information be communicated effectively to broad audiences. I think this might be an area that we can give a little more attention to in our classes. And the other kind of area of genres that I found myself thinking about more and more is, I'm not really sure if there's a label, but I guess I would call them like genres of citizenship or citizen participation. One of the things I've been writing for the last week, almost every day, been writing to my school board. I've been writing to my county board of supervisors. I've been writing to my legislators. These are not things that I was used to doing before. And they're hard and they take a lot of time, but I feel so fortunate that I have a writing background, because I have all of this kind of explicit knowledge about how to write for different audiences and how to persuade your readers. But it's really made me think about how we might expand even academic writing classes to include some non-academic writing, because I think it really helps writers to be flexible, to think about audience, to think about writing that impacts their lives. And they might get more engaged. They might see ways that this is relevant to them beyond writing in a classroom. So those are just my initial thoughts.
Thanks, Chris. And you mentioned that citizenship participation. Is it kind of multimodal genres as well? Apart from text, do you have to put any extra objects on it?
Yeah, that's a good.
A bit more about that.
A good question. I think things like hyperlinks, visuals like graphs or charts might become relevant in those kinds of genres. And certainly communicating academic content to broader audiences, I think a lot of that is more effective when it's multimodal. And I was thinking, like, is it relevant anymore to have an academic writing class where we only focus on the written word? So I think it's a question we can all pose to ourselves and the classes that we're teaching. Obviously, that has a big impact on that.
Right. Thank you. Okay. How about the others? Do you have any interesting? Do you come across any interesting genres or texts during the pandemic that emerged because of the pandemic?
I can say that I have done it before the pandemic, but I'm doing it more during the pandemic. So I have taught an upper division class on rhetoric and writing. And the final assignments ask students to think about writing in based on their own interests. And they can use rhetoric that they learn from the class and try to send their messages to their targeted audience in their own communities. And a lot of my students come from they have engineering backgrounds or political science. So I have students from across campus. And so a lot of students, they picked, select the topic of their interest and use way of not just writing. It's more about they present their ideas using a podcast and present their ideas on a blog post like that. So they are learning to understanding the conventions of these particular genres, and they analyze the features of this particular, for example, if you want to produce a podcast, they have to understand what convention or what features of podcast. And then once they have an idea, they produce their own podcast. And at the same time, this is an idea from Chris. I used one of your chapters about innovation. in your chapter to assign my students to read. And then I challenge them, okay, how about you bend the rules, you bend the genres, that try to be innovative or creative, and try to, okay, this is the convention of a podcast, and how would you make it, how would you bend the rules or like deviate from the convention of a podcast? And then they have to write that. And for those of you students who do a blog post, they have to do the same thing. Some students who are so into the political, they design a political campaign brochure, things like that. So I think this is allow them to like have use rhetoric, and then by choosing the type of based on the interest, so they learn rhetoric. At the same time, they learn to analyze their own targeted audience, and then allow them to use like multimodal ways of writing, like that, to present their ideas. So I have seen it a lot more like during the pandemic, they tend to be more like innovative, not turning in a paper. It's more about like using this like a different channel, different platforms like that. Some of them even create a video game, like by writing so writing is also part of that. So instruction, right? You have to write instruction to do a video game. They have to analyze instruction in a video game and produce their own video game. Yeah, things like that, that you should encourage them to be more creative and challenge them to be innovative like that. So yeah, so that is an idea. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Ajahn Tanita. Yes, Paul, did you raise your hand, Paul? Sorry, maybe you were scratching your head. Right. So bending the rules, yes, that's Chris said in one of her books, and everywhere as well. So yeah, and that could be a way to create another emerging genres, right? Especially during the pandemic, I think people have seen interesting new texts coming up because of the like, you know, in Thailand every morning we have that, you know, COVID-19 reports, right, with the numbers and the colors of, you know, red means the one who got infected, the new cases, and the black would be the black section would mean the people who died in the past day, and the green would be the one who go home. You know, with these kind, no text at all, just the colors and the numbers. I think people could understand. So I think that since we are talking about emerging genres, so every morning I find that in Thailand we have that kind of new genres as well, which is easy for everyone to understand using colors and numbers, right? Dr. Supong and Paul, have any comments on this point before we move on?
I'm not sure, you know, if this is a new genre, but, you know, one of our assignments, you know, is to have our student, you know, look at maybe some applications, right? You know, the applications that we use maybe for educational purposes, right? Business purposes, right? You know, and we ask them, you know, to prepare, right, an app using that imagination, okay, to maybe enhance the creativity. So they have to create, but not the real one, okay, but, you know, it's like they plan, okay, they plan, you know, if they have to create an app, you know, what kind of application they would create, okay, what are the components, okay? So that means they have to create this, you know, using, I mean, their own tools, okay? I don't know what the tools are, right? I'm too old for that, all right? So they have different tools, you know, that they can use, you know. The teenagers are good at this actually, all right? After that, maybe they have to maybe prepare a video presentation. It's not just like PowerPoint presentation, but they have to present, all right, the app, you know, on the video, okay? And so, you know, that means, you know, during the presentation through the video, they have the way that they have to know, right, you know, how to present orally, give oral presentation, okay, appropriately. And after that, they have to write the review, you know, for the app. So this is kind of maybe the combination, okay, of different skills, okay? So that means they have to learn, you know, from other apps, okay, visually, okay, cognitively, and then they have to create their own, right? They have to use their own imagination and creativity, you know, to create their own app. And then they have to present their app using, I mean, spoken discourse. And finally, they have to write a review, okay? So that, you know, they know, right, how to give the review, you know, on the app that they use, okay? So the review, you know, actually maybe a kind of review like this, you know, would be considered as a genre as well, right? You know, the review, you know, of any, I think, you know, students, I mean, teenagers are very familiar, you know, with the reviews now, okay? A food review, hotel review, whatever kinds of review. Okay, so this is a kind of combination use that we have integrated, right, in one of our tests, in our course.
I think that's a mix of everything as well. You have the written genre, you have the spoken genre, you have technology for education technology as well. So that's very interesting, Dr. Supong. And how about you, Paul? Any interesting thing that you come across? You can talk about genres post-Olympics as well in Japan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, my comment is going to be uninspiring, but my sense is that these are great observations, and I think the pandemic situation forced us to encounter life in different ways and think about it more critically, or we became more aware of things that we just completely didn't notice before. So I think using this time to take stock of what we have and then to think about how we can reformulate them to respond to local issues, local concerns. I think these are great discussions to have. But my sense is that the pandemic and the post-pandemic, or the new normal, or the whatever we call it, isn't going to create a watershed moment. It's not going to be a revolution. It's not going to be a completely different paradigm. But it's going to be a different combination of the same things that we've been doing. We've been talking about multimodality. We've been talking about flipped classrooms. And we've been talking about the importance of engagement. We've been talking about the importance of low stakes assessment, and so on. So these are the ongoing discussions but thinking about the pandemic situation actually gave us a chance to revisit them and to think more seriously about how we can implement them. So as a result of this discussion, I hope our teaching will be better overall, and we will have more tools to work with. But it's not going to be a completely different ball game altogether.
Okay. So wow, I agree with you, Paul. I think it's not going to be a radical change after the post-COVID. A lot of things will remain the same, but we just have more tools to help us, and new methods of teaching and researching, collecting data as well. So thank you so much. I think we can entertain a question from the floor a little bit before we move on to, thinking about in the future post-pandemic, since Paul mentioned a little bit already. This is a question from Maria, I think, and then Chris thought that it's a good question as well. Maria is in her first year of PhD studies, and she finds it difficult for her to make progress in writing her proposal in the pandemic condition. I think, everyone is facing the same situation of being alone at home, writing with no peer pressure or no pressure from your supervisors or something like that. She's asking, is there any suggestion for students on how to improve motivation in writing, especially writing in a second language? Pressure.
I have a couple of things I could share because my grad students had brought this up. And if you can find a writing group of some sort, they don't have to be people in your discipline. They just have to be people that you trust and like to be around. You can find ways to motivate each other. So some of the things that I've done with my various groups, my grad students, my colleagues, and also heard of other people doing, are having just writing times where we just get on Zoom and write for an hour or 3 hours, whatever we have. And we do a little check-in at the beginning and the end. One of my grad students is a firm believer in rewards. So every time she accomplishes some writing goal, she buys herself a plant or something like, something small, but something that kind of motivates her and lets her reward herself. I've also done with colleagues little accountability groups. So we have we'll make a little table of every day of the week, and we try to write every day for at least 15 minutes. And we just have, do a little check if we accomplish our writing. I've done the same thing in Facebook groups with friends. And we post little memes every day to motivate each other and then check in to see if you wrote. So finding whatever you can and like finding your people and then setting up, you know, whether it's accountability or just writing or feedback, whatever works for you, or even a combination of things, it just makes it less isolating, and try to find a way to make it fun, you know, so that you're kind of helping each other together and making it social, but you know, that little bit of motivation. And I'm sure other people have ideas, but those are some of the things that I've done with various groups.
Thanks, Chris. How about, yeah, Paul, please.
There are a lot of different things I could say, but one thing that I might add to what Chris has already said is find something that disturbs you. Find something that makes you mad. A lot of times people try to find things that they like or they are interested in, and they like it so much that they can't approach it critically. But if you can find conventional wisdom, existing knowledge, methods that you find problems with, try to understand the problem thoroughly, and then try to come up with one solution. I think that kind of motivation, the you know, addressing the dissonance, is a great way to motivate our writing. And in fact, the last piece of writing that I wrote was about the disciplinary identity of second language writing. And somebody wrote about my work, basically, saying, and she was trying to disagree with me. So, you know, I had to say something about it, right? And until then, I wasn't really motivated to do anything. But that tension really helped me to write something. And I was so passionate that I wrote it really quickly, and I put in a lot of effort into it. And I'm really happy that I did it.
Oh, that's interesting, Paul. You know, turning something that bugs you into something that drives you further, drives you forward. Very interesting. I'll try to find those to use with my students then. Ajahn Supong and Ajahn Tanita, any idea on increasing motivation?
Just something add to add. I was part of the group that Chris just mentioned too. Okay. Like we wrote, like I think in May, right? I think in May, we like had a Chris created a Facebook group. Like you write every day for 15 minutes, and then you have to report your progress. And I find it worked so much. I was able to finish 3 things, like one book chapters and 2 revised articles. So everything is out right now. So we see what happens. And I think one thing I could add is that I think peer pressures also works. Let's say you have a writing buddy. Right? I did that when I was a grad student writing my dissertation. And I met with a friend every day in the library. And then we sit across the table. And 2 of us wrote completely different topics, but it just sit, okay, oh, she's there writing. And then we have to report, okay, how many words did you write today? Just kind of a little bit of peer pressure. Oh, she wrote a lot, I have to speed up, things like that. You have to figure it out a way to make you write. That is very easy, but you need to be, I think, yes, figure it out a way that works for you and try to find a good writing buddy that understands your own situation like that. So, yeah.
Thank
Yes.
you. Yes, Pete Supong, please.
Yeah, I agree, you know, with you all, right? You know, particularly, you know, with the group writing, okay, maybe for MA students, okay, that what Christine mentioned, okay? So let them, you know, meet each other more often, okay, using Facebook, as maybe Tanita said and Paul said. All right, so I mean, because of the new technology, right? I mean, the online access, you know, is very easy. So they can meet anytime, right, to share their ideas, right, to share the peer review or feedback. That's good enough. I mean, for writing any writing tasks, okay. But I think, you know, for the proposal writing, I mean, if you're a PhD student, right, and you have to write your proposal, I think that's not a problem during the pandemic, right? This is kind of, you know, a classical problem, right, for any PhD student, right, who has to struggle, you know, with a proposal anyway, right? So they have to be very disciplined and have to spend maybe like 15 minutes a day, as I mentioned, or maybe longer than that, okay, to develop, okay, the proposal bit by bit. But what they would need, you know, is the feedback, you know, from the supervisor. Okay, sometimes they can also get some feedback, you know, from their peers as well, if they work on a similar topic, all right, or they can ask any colleagues, right, at their universities. I mean, if because most of our students, are, I mean, PhD students are university, right, lecturers, okay, or if they're school teachers, they can also ask, some help, right, in terms of feedback, from their colleagues. They can ask any readers, to help them, okay, to give them some feedback, all right, and I try to encourage my students, to spend more time writing, but they have to write regularly, so they have to send me, right, the writing, maybe almost like once a week, okay, maybe just a little bit of their writing. Because maybe most students would expect to write like a chunk of writing, okay, I mean the part of the proposal, and they just expect to write a whole chapter, okay, in short time, and send me the whole chunk. So I just try to encourage them to write little by little, and send me maybe part of each chapter, okay, and then they can revise and they can put things together later, okay. So I think we have to, I'm not, and at our university, right, when they enroll, okay, for their thesis, if they do not meet the requirements, in terms of the proposal or thesis defense, in that particular semester, they will not earn the credit, right, that they plan, to have to gain. Okay, so that means they have to lose some credits, and they have to lose some money, okay, for the registration. That means they have to take the next semester, the following semester, I mean, paying for the credits again. Okay, I'm not sure if this is motivation. Of course, this is not positive thing, right? But this is kind of pressure that also have, so that they can complete their work in time.
Well, thanks. I think pressure works wonder. And Christine says that write every day in May, which I agree. But I think in August, probably writing is a must in August, I think, probably. And they say, well, a doctor, an apple a day keeps a doctor away, right? So maybe we can tell our students 1 page a day keeps your supervisor away from your desk, and you can do other things on that day. All right, thank you so much. What I do sometimes, I have to be careful here because my students are listening as well. Sometimes I am the one who put peer pressure on my students. I say, hey, do you know that she's finishing chapter 5 already? And what about you? Would you like to, how far have you gone through your writing, something like that? And now they know my trick. Okay, thank you. So thank you so much for this round. I think we have sort of half an hour left, and to be honest, I have probably 7 or 8 questions in my note here. So, but before we entertain questions, shall we talk about the important issue here about the post-pandemic? So, what do you see will happen after the pandemic has subsided? Of course, it's not going to go away. It's going to be a common flu event. But what would you see happen? What lies ahead after, let's say, normalcy resumes? And Paul mentioned a little bit earlier about the way that we connect through conferences, physical conferences, not online virtual conferences. So you can talk about things that you see will happen in the near future, I hope. So Paul, would you like to start with your ideas on conferencing, please?
Next year I'm going to cut down on the amount of conferences, unless I'm invited or unless I have some serious stakes in it. I probably won't be traveling that much. I might be traveling to institutions if I can travel, given the local situations. But I still don't know when the next symposium on second language writing is going to be. There are a couple of places that I was thinking about, but I'm not sure if it's realistic. So I might keep it small, have it at ASU, so I know the facility and the situations, and have plenty of backup plans so that if things don't work out the way I imagined, we can cancel it or change the format. And I think having the conference for its own sake is a mistake. I think that's happening all over the place right now. But if I were to start again, I want to find a real purpose and do something that people who actually need to be there can be part of it. And I don't know what it's going to look like yet at this point. But so if you have any suggestions, any of you, I'm all ears.
Thanks, Paul. And honestly, I miss going to conferences as well. Not just, going away from my usual university, but then, meeting faces, going to rooms, running from room to room, listening to, new fresh ideas that people throw to the audience during the conference, right? Okay, so since, all of the panelists have been working on either organizing conferences, presenting at conferences, what any other ideas that you have about the way that we meet at conferences post COVID-19? Do you think that meeting online like this is as effective as meeting at conferences?
Sometimes.
I will say that. Oh, go ahead.
Yes. Okay, I think sometimes effective. Okay, because we don't have to travel and we don't have to spend too much time, right? Traveling and doing things before we can travel or before we join the conference, right? So I'm thinking about maybe the possibility of having more hybrid conferences. Okay, so we can do it online. Okay, and we also have maybe participants from the local places to attend. Okay, I think some conferences have become hybrid now. And also the classrooms. Okay, now at Thammasat, okay, we are setting up more and more hybrid classrooms. Even though now we have to be totally online now, but we are planning ahead for a hybrid classroom. So that means some students can be on campus, right? Attending the classes right on the site, but then others are at home working, right? Joining the lectures and doing tasks, right? So that means we can go more hybrid. Okay, and I think then we have more opportunities to invite speakers, like scholars like all of you here, to give lectures, to do workshops, to organize webinars. Now it's going to be more convenient. If you cannot travel to Thailand, then we can invite you to do this online. So so far we have invited some professors who can give their lectures to our PhD and MA students online. So it's very convenient now. We don't have to travel much. And that means our students can access the information, useful information from scholars more conveniently, even though they still want to meet the scholars in person. So that means we can again sometimes do it online, sometimes we can do it in person. It depends on the situation when we can travel more easily in the future after the pandemic, right? So yeah, of course we can invite all of you to like Paul and Christine to come to Thailand, to give lectures and do workshop as usual. But sometimes in terms of convenience, right, we can do it online. We can do it hybrid. During the on-site, if we have an on-site workshop or seminar, we can also do hybrid as well. Other people can also access that online. Thank you.
I totally agree that online conferences can be effective, but the thing is how do we keep them engaged, right? Like you can see people tend to switch off their camera when listening to conferences or listening to lectures, but we don't have the right to ask them to have their camera on all the time. That's another thing that we have to think about, engagement. Okay, Christine, you were saying something? Sorry.
I think, many of the same points. I love that we can have events like this. And I've really enjoyed being able to attend other, webinars and online discussions over the last year and a half. So I hope that continues. I think it's great. I hope we do have face-to-face conferences again, but maybe we don't need as many, or maybe we don't individually need to attend as many. And if there's online options, we can still continue and create some of our networks and get to know people. But, I do think we also should be thinking about the planet. Someone talked about paper earlier, but, also flying is is a big deal, and maybe we're going to get better at learning to collaborate and build communities online. And I'm sure many of you have attended multiple online conferences, and they're variable. I found that the ones that have really good spaces for interaction have been more rewarding for me. So I think we're learning, and hopefully we'll find ways to blend what we've learned in the future with maybe some of what we did before.
Say that virtual conferences, give you opportunity to learn in your comfort zone, right? But then sometimes you feel too comfortable to learn. Right. Dan Tanita, any comments or ideas on what future would look like in terms of going to conferences?
Yeah, I just have a brief idea. I'm thinking about like how presentations are delivered on online conferences. Like, for example, I think in March, I attended TESOL conference. It was completely online. And to be honest, I was not happy with like the on-demand that you have to like watch a video. And to me, it's not effective at all because I don't like watching a video. I want interactive. I want like the kind of like real time, like thing like this. So I can choose to watch, but I didn't do anything. I pay for the Google conferences just to present, but I didn't really attend because I have to like watch like an hour video and do, and I didn't like that. So just from my own as a conference attendees, I think way in which presentations are delivered should be taken into consideration just for conference organizers in the future. This is from an audience, from an attendee perspective. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I agree. And it's not just the mode of presentation, but one thing I don't like about online conferences, especially for individual presentations, is that there is not a lot of interactions. It's just a one-way presentation of ideas and maybe a few nice work. I enjoyed your presentation, but no dialogue, no questions, critical engagement. And I think that's the whole point of having individual presentations, not just to have presented, but to spark dialogues, questions, and maybe challenge each other a little bit so that we can do better next time. If it's just the ideas that I'm interested, it's better to sit at home and read. It's much more efficient and it's much more accurate than oral presentations. So to me, the whole point of having a conference is to have that human interaction. And most of the best conversations I've had happened outside of these sessions, in the hallway, while we are eating, walking around at night, talking to each other. And so in online conferences, that's the part that's missing. And if I can add just one more thing, online conferences, many of them are commercialized and they try to replicate the in-person conference experience, and that's impossible. It's just superficial. I think online conferences have its own merit and own affordances. So instead of trying to replicate what we used to have, I think we need to reconsider the philosophy of online conference organization and the purpose for giving presentations or interacting. That's from an organizer's perspective.
Absolutely, Paul, I agree with you. And one thing is that, getting support from the audience, right? When you present face to face, you see their faces, sometimes their frowns, that, oh, I might have done something wrong in my research, something like that. So I totally agree that, that cannot be replaced, right? We still need, one day we still resume our, online conferences like the way that we used to, but could be hybrid, like Dr. Supong said. There will be some who are on site, there will be some who are, watching us, presenting us from their homes or whatever. I think that would be a nice way out after pandemic. Okay, thank you so much. I think we can stop for another question from the floor. So this is quite important as well about empathy. These participant asked, how can we become more emphatic secondary teacher? Yes, this is about empathy in classroom, in teaching. I think any comment on that? How could we become more emphatic?
I think just giving the
Please.
benefit of the doubt. You know, if somebody's turning off their camera, there might be something critical going on. So trying to tell people to act in a certain way is not productive. And if students are not motivated to write, then you know it's not just the students' responsibility. You know, we need to make the lectures more interesting. We need to make the assignments more engaging. And there are lots of principles, you know, that I can share. I don't have the time for it right now. To make assignments more accessible, engaging, and it takes a lot of good pedagogy, you know, combining resources, strategies, and understanding, you know.
Yes. Yeah, understanding. Yes. So, Chris or Tanita or Supong, how can we become more emphatic?
I think I can just to pick up on what Paul said. What I have done during the pandemic is that I did a kind of a mini survey at the very beginning of the class, asking them about something about, okay, I have 1 or 2 questions asking about, okay, what do you need me to know about your circumstances? Anything that I should know about you, and anything that I could help you to succeed in my class. And this is a survey that I can see on my own. Other students won't be able to see it. So I know students as individuals, and that I can address their needs better individually. So I think this is a good way to begin a class. Yeah.
Thanks, Tanita. Chris, any?
Well, I did the same thing as Tanita this year with one of my undergraduate classes, and I will do it from now on because the responses were so interesting, but ask them specifically about how they learn in an online environment and what difficulties they've had and what they think helps them do well in an online environment. And the responses were so thoughtful and really insightful for me, and I will always ask those questions from now on. So I think Tanita's spot on that we just need to kind of open spaces where students can share with us if they choose to, you know, what struggles they're having, but also what helps them do well in the different environments that we're teaching in.
So, and I want to add on that too. I do like the assessment at the very beginning and then ongoing in the middle of the semester. I ask them to reflect on their own learning in the online platform. What is going well for them? What is not? How we are doing as a class, what we need to change, and like that. And if they don't feel comfortable speaking out, they can write in the chat.
Yes.
So I give them different way. Okay, speaking out or write in the chat like that. So it creates kind of understanding amongst them, like that. So yeah.
And apart from that, we show them our respect as well as their teachers, right? We're not, you know, father knows best in the classroom, and you know, we respect each other. You respect me as your teacher, and I respect you as an individual, a student who has, you know, feelings and emotions as well. So I like that idea, Tanita.
Yeah, because I think we are human, right? So I don't see them as like we are human beings. We need some kind of, yeah. I don't think we don't have to act as academics all the way, like that. This is how I see things. So like yeah, like that.
Thank you. Dr. Supong, anything on that?
The same thing, right? I don't want to repeat what our friends have mentioned, but I think that it's a very good idea, to think about more engaging assignments, as Paul said. All right, and we have to encourage them, to discuss more, to talk more. During the classes, maybe. Okay, as Christine and Tanita mentioned. Okay, just try to give them more opportunities to share their ideas, maybe through chat, or they have to ask us question, they have to ask this other question, during the class time, or maybe after the class time. Okay, they try to think about the activities that help them, to meet each other, maybe even online. Okay, so that because we are human, yes, so they have to somehow meet each other. we just hope that, after the end of the pandemic, right, they can come back and meet each other, right, in person.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. And writing is human's activity, right? So what about machine? I think I have a question from the floor about using Google Translate. So what do you think about that? Will it become more popular? I think it's becoming popular this day during the pandemic. And what about in the future? What do you think about using machine to write for us? Especially translating one language to another language. What do you think about this issue?
Well, the technology is here to stay, and students are going to use them. And if students can function using the Google Translate, then there's no problem. The problem is that they don't always use it right, or they can't verify what they end up creating using these technologies. So I think rather than denying that they exist or preventing students from using them, I think we need to help students develop strategies to use them wisely and effectively.
Chris, please.
Yeah, I worked with, I can't take credit for this, but I worked with a PhD student who wrote a dissertation looking at different uses of translation tools in the classroom. And it actually was not even a second language classroom, but certainly would be adaptable. But one thing that she had students do was work in small groups, and it was a business writing class, and they took a text and put it through different translation tools. And then they had to kind of analyze the different translations and think about them linguistically and rhetorically. And I thought it was such a really great way to engage students with translation, not just as like, this is the translation, but what are the different effects of different choices that these artificial translators might create in their texts. So maybe we'll become better at how to use those tools pedagogically and learn and kind of work with students to think of them not just as something automatic that they do, but something that they think more critically about.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's not whether, to use it or not, but it's to use it right, how to use it right, like Paul said. Okay, Dr.
Yes,
Supong.
I also agree. Yeah, thinking about it, let them know the process, of writing. Okay, so maybe using Google Translation is one part of it. Okay, but maybe we can also introduce them other resources so that they can improve their writing at the same time, right? So they can use Google Translation, they can use some kind of maybe corpus-based resources, all right? Some online tools to help them write. So you should introduce to them, right, as many resources, right, to help them to write better. Right. Of course, the online tools that are available now. All right. So of course, we cannot prevent them from using Google Translation, but let them know that this is just part of it, part of the whole thing. All right. And let them learn how to improve their writing. Okay. Using different resources.
Absolutely. And I think, one of our job is to point out the possible sources, learning sources that they can do outside class or by themselves as well. And that is increasing their learning autonomy, like Jared said in the chat box as well. So I think it's one of our job to show them the other avenues for their learning. Okay. Dr. Tanita, any issue on this before we move on to the final question for today?
I'm going to be brief. I feel like, let's say, if we can't prevent them from using these technologies, right? So what we could do, maybe we can ask them, okay, how about we use the Google and then analyze how this machine translate from Thai to English, and then learn from that analysis of the Google translation. That's what we could do, that they're learning from that machine and see how well Google Translate works, like that. So, yeah.
Okay. So thank you so much. Yes, I think time really flies. We have only 10 minutes left, and I'm saving this last question for myself because it's from me, not from the floor. So far, we've talked about, and I think at the beginning, Dr. Tanita mentioned about reviewing papers and publication. So my question is about how publication has changed, how publication processes and the way that we review, the way that since many of Paul and Christine serve as editors-in-chief, I think, of some of journals, and Tanita may serve as an editorial board of certain journals as well. So from your point of view as editor, reviewers, what are the changes and what would happen after COVID-19? I want to know that because I want to publish too.
I'm not sure if this is directly related to the pandemic, but I'm seeing more and more bogus journals. Email from International Journal of Economics and whatever, asking me, to publish something, and it's just, so being able to critically evaluate which journal to submit to is going to be a crucial skill, and it's part of disciplinary knowledge, knowing which journals count and which journals don't. And when you look at the list of reviewers and the editorial board members, if you don't recognize any of the name, either you don't know the people in the field, which is a problem, or that the people are not known. So I think that's something that we need to pay more attention to.
Thanks, Paul. And Tanita, you said that the pandemic sometimes delayed your review result back to the editor as well. So so how did that happen, and how did you solve that?
I think it's more like maybe my comments and also my questions to you all too. Like I'm thinking though maybe the nature of the research might be changed because of we can't do much like empirical work. The trend of research would be changed to something like more like conceptualized work, theoretical work. Like that can be what, I don't know what's going to happen maybe in the next few years. If we analyze like work that like came out during and after the pandemic, maybe types of research might be changed. Right? And also speaking of this, like the review process, because I think review editors understand. They will have 1 or 2 lines in addition to what they say, oh, we invite you, but we understand your situation. If you need more time to review out the manuscripts, we will be happy to work with your schedule.
Yes.
So this means it's so hard for them to find reviewers to review manuscript these days. So I haven't seen these 2 lines before in the past, but not this day. We are happy to work with your schedule. We know that you're in this difficult time, blah, blah, something. So that is the thing. And then as a writer, so as an author, so and again, like it takes longer time to publish, like to produce good work, given all of circumstances, but we have to do it because we have to do it. So yeah, just a general thoughts and comments. Yeah.
Thank you, and that's empathy already, right? So we know that reviewers and editors are human too, so they should understand our restrictions and limitations during the pandemic. Okay, so Dr. Supong and Christine, since I think you work as editor, and your Dr. Supong department owns a journal as well. So what changes have you seen in terms of publication processes from your point of view?
Okay, so as Tanita mentioned, okay, maybe it takes longer, okay, for the reviewers, right, to review the manuscripts, okay, because of like the delays and everything, right? Not in technology, okay, but because maybe we have to be involved with many different things during this time. But I agree, with Tanita, when we talk about the data, right? Maybe we have to change the way that we do research, okay? Like I think maybe in some other fields, not in our field, okay, when they can analyze sort of the big data that they have, okay, they can access the information very easily, right? And they can use complicated what's called statistical analysis, okay, to deal with that data. And so some of the professors at Thammasat could produce more and more work during the pandemic, right? Some of them even earned that professorship. Okay, they said, oh, they have more time. Okay, so actually on the other, on the other side of the coin, right? They have more time when they have to, when they can stay at home, right? Working more, if they are disciplined and active enough, right? So that means they don't stay at home just doing something else, fooling around, right? But they have to work every day. They don't have to commute. Okay, so that's a good thing about the pandemic anyway, right? So yeah, so at Thammasat here, those active researchers, okay, got more work to produce, okay, but most of them are of course in the what you call the sciences field. Okay, for us, we have more teaching to do. Okay, so those in the kind of sciences, business administration, okay, they could produce a lot more, and they just analyze the data that they have online. They could access online data really easily. They use status quo analysis to do that, and they could publish a lot more. That's what they told me. Okay, so that's what we can do in terms of what we can think about in terms of how we could do our research. Maybe we can change, right, the way that we do research. If we just have to collect the data from experiments, from schools, right, that would be very difficult now. Text analysis, would be okay, possible. Discourse analysis, would be possible, right? But of course, we need to spend our time, right, wisely. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Supong. I agree with that too. I heard stories of after the pandemic, during the pandemic, right, more submissions have been made to the journals because people have more time. They can sit down and look at their data that they have collected long time ago and produce papers. So Chris, do you think that's the case as well? And what's happening at least the second journal of second language writing that you are a great part of?
So I'm actually only on the editorial board now. So I finished my editorship. I do think they've had an increased number of submissions. But one thing I wanted to add to that, I think I was going to say a lot of what Tanita said, but on the discussion of increased submissions, that there have been a few studies in the sciences that have shown that while that is the case, maybe overall, women are submitting less. And I do hope that we keep in mind that the pandemic has influenced people in very different ways. And often it has been women who have taken more responsibilities on, for example, childcare or elder care. And I do worry a lot about the impacts in the short term and maybe even the long term of what this time has, how it's impacted different people in our profession. So I also hope we can keep that in mind as we think about things like promotion and tenure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, unfortunately, when Dr. Supong said that people are more productive during the pandemic, that doesn't happen to me. I'm even less productive, I think. And you said that male may submit papers more. I still haven't submitted anything. Sorry. And I don't have child to take care of, by the way.
And well, it's just stress too. We are all, whether you have children that you're taking care of or, someone in your family who's lost their job, we have many stresses. And I think, people deal with stress in very different ways. So for some people, it means they can throw themselves into their work, but others may be paralyzed by it.
I think just to go up on that, I think at my institution, I think in the last 2 years, UT has come up with asking faculty member to write a COVID statement, put it in their annual review. So how COVID has impact on their teaching, research, or service activities, just a 1 page and put that in the annual review. So at least to have a place to explain that why you can be productive in this particular year and things like that. Just to be like mindful, right? So of other people's circumstances, that people have different ways to deal with the crises or just a stress, something like that. Yeah. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Yes, and that could be another new genre already, right, Chris? Pandemic report, yes, at UT Knoxville. Yes, thank you so much. Well, class, I think the bottom line is that as we tell our students to keep writing, we professors have to keep writing as well, right? Maybe a page a day keeps the editor away. Maybe. Okay, so thank you so much. We have only 1 minute left. Can I turn the floor back to Joey and Dr. Ponpimon, please? Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, my panelists.
Thank you very much, our speakers, and also Assistant Professor Dr. Issra for that wonderful moderation. And truly, we learned a lot from the conversation, particularly on how we can take advantage of the affordances that, these technologies can offer to us, particularly in our teaching of writing and even understanding that very struggle that each and everyone experience. So I would like to invite everyone to please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you intend to rewatch some of the webinar series, both in our series 1 and 2. You can easily visit our website and in a YouTube channel and rewatch them. And if you wish to be updated with the current events offered by the EIL program and even the talks that are being conducted, you can visit us via Facebook, and you just need to type in English as an International Language Chulalongkorn University, and we constantly post updates as regards public lectures, webinar series. And for the last words, may we welcome back our Director, Assistant Professor Dr. Ponpimon Sukawati.
Okay, well, thank you, Joey. But actually, I need to inform you, the audience, that the videos are unlisted. So you need to go directly to our channel only to to watch the video. My last word would go for to express my appreciation to all my favorite scholars to come and join our webinar series today. And I think that, the audience benefit a lot from your conversation, that it could like a key takeaway that they can use in their real life. I would say this is so meaningful to the audience, even to me. Well, thank you very much for coming, everyone. Hope to see you in person in the very near future, everyone. Let's pray for COVID, keep the COVID away. How can we keep the COVID away, Ajahn Issra?
Maybe our Thai herb, yeah, that Fa Thalai Joan and the King Ka and we use herbs to prevent COVID-19 as well.
Special thanks to you, Ajahn Issra, for a wonderful job as a moderator, right? This is our honor to have you as our moderator to this session.
Thank you, my panelists. Thank you for the opportunity. I just say that I apologize for those of you who posed the question, but we didn't have time to cover your question. Sorry.
Okay, goodbye, everyone.
Bye, Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Tanita. Thank you, Supong. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone.